Digital twin implementation is where the real work begins. Choosing a platform is important, but deploying it, integrating it, and operating it across an organization is where owners either unlock value or stall out. Welcome to the Digital Exchange. Today, we're breaking down what it takes to implement a digital twin platform successfully, from data readiness and governance to change management, integrations, and long-term adoption. Let's get it. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy today. I got my buddy, the Dynamo King, Mr. Ian Siegel on here. And I met you. We were working with digital twins together, but I think you done moved on to something big, and I don't know better, but you moved on to something different. So I know who Ian is, but why don't you tell the people about a little bit about you and how you got started into this?
Sure. Sounds good. Hey, everybody. Great to be on this show. Robert, thanks again for the invitation. It was exciting to hear from you. I love just hanging out and talking with you, and the opportunity to do that on something that other people are going to benefit from is exciting to me. So I'm really happy to be here. But yeah, by way of intros, so my career started off. I'm from the industry. Started my career off in New York City as an architect. So went to school for architecture. Specialized very early in my career in BIM and VDC. So worked 1 year doing corporate interiors, and quickly kind of understood, all right, that's not really the part of the industry I wanted to focus on. And then for the next 4 years or so, went to work with KPF Architects, a big design firm in New York City with offices around the world. And so I was doing BIM support there. So working alongside super talented teams of architects who were designing mega projects in New York City, in China, in the Middle East, all over the world. And that was a lot of fun. I thought I had my dream job there until one day, one of the BIM VDC consultants that we were working with, based out of Sydney, Australia, the CEO of that company, his name is Josh Ridley. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, Ian, I'm serious about opening our first BIM VDC consulting office here in North America. Looking for someone to kind of head that up. Are you interested?" So I said yes to him, because I figured if that company became anything at all successful, I was going to regret not taking him up on it. And then around the time that I had joined the company, they had decided that they were going to start building their own software and pivot, not so much in doing BIM and VDC primarily for owners and contractors, but they were going to build out a digital twin solution, a SaaS solution for owners of corporate and commercial real estate portfolios to be able to monitor in real time things like their energy consumption, carbon emissions, people counting. So they were going to be integrating to all these operation stage solutions. And there was going to be a BIM element of it all. So it was kind of almost like kind of allowing the BIM to survive into operations in a meaningful way. So that was enough to get me really excited. Then that company is now called Willow, and I had a blast working with them for close to 8 years. And just joined Procore actually a little over a year ago at this point. And that's really just because I was ready for a new adventure. I absolutely loved working for Willow, and they continue to do really great things for some major brands around the world. But joined Procore because they are more focused than they have ever been on enabling portfolio owners to get more out of their construction stage. So a lot of the thing that attracted me to Willow in the first place about helping owners and operators with their data that originates during the design and construction stage, Procore has been making some really exciting updates in that space too. So it's been a lot of fun working with some major customers at Procore and helping them out also.
Well, I'll tell you, when we joined that NIPS committee together and I saw you on there, I was like, wait a minute, you Procore? I was like, well, I don't know how you got there. I don't know how you got there, but I'm glad you explained it. Now I know. So we've been working together since it's 2018, 19, somewhere around there. And I never thought to ask you. So
Yeah, that's right. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't come up in conversation, but my career has been far from linear. And I want to encourage anyone who's listening too. It's like, I feel like a lot of times we go to school, we learn the direction that we want to go in. And there's plenty of people who are super successful that kind of stay the course. And but I feel like there's a major opportunity anytime that you're at a company. Ask yourself, like, what am I contributing to this organization? How does this business earn money And what is my role in ensuring that this is a healthy, successful company? And I feel like when I kind of looked at my role when I was doing BIM support at an architectural design firm where BIM wasn't usually a contractual obligation. In some cases, BIM was an obligation. But for the most part, my role was help design teams work a little bit more efficiently. So if I needed to justify what am I doing in this job, that's what I could point to and say, well, I'm helping a team of X number of people save this many hours, and you could tie that to dollars later on. But ultimately, I was not a part of like the core business that was what KPF was selling as their product, which is world class architectural design. And so it was really cool to be able to move on to Willow and participate in a more meaningful way in terms of growing that business. I started off as just like their one and only person in North America. So step one was just kind of pound the pavement, try to find people that would be interested in buying a digital twin. Wait a second, what even is a digital twin?
Yeah.
What's it going to do for me? So then the next step was, well, we've got to refine what even is a digital twin that you're going to be buying with Willow, and what does it mean to you as a customer? Why is it worth spending your money on it? So I felt like sharpening my skills as a salesperson for the very first time with no experience. That was super cool. And then once we did start winning some of our first big customers, I very quickly pivoted over into implementation. So building the thing that the customer had bought.
I come out of land survey. I didn't know anything about them. You know what I mean? And they sent me to some classes, the AGC classes over in
Oh yeah.
Arlington, Virginia for a week. And then I knew about MicroStation and AutoCAD, but I ain't know nothing about Revit. And quite frankly, I still don't care about it that much, but my mind is still on the flat. But
Mhm.
dude, I'm telling you, you never know where your career will take you. But you know what? You got to be able to step out, get out of your
Absolutely.
comfort zone, and dive into it. It's funny that the path you took, the path that I took, and how we ended up together, two guys from two totally different arenas. And you know what? We had a job to do. So
Yep. Yep.
which brings me to a good question. So when you're dealing with owners, and I know you've dealt with aviation, you've done with some real estate, some various markets. What are some of the things that owners should have in place before they think they want to dive into a digital twin to implement one?
We touched on it already in the conversation is
Right.
there's a lot of, I'll say, confusion in the market. What even is a digital twin? If you ask 10 different people what a digital twin is, you probably are going to get like 11 or 12 different answers, more than 10,
100%. 100%. I
right?
mean, we did on our NIBS conference committee. You remember I asked, I'm like, you get variant answers every time we ask somebody. So I'm with
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm thinking a couple years back. So maybe like 5 years ago, I kind of think digital twin was a hype word, probably not quite as hyped up as AI is today. But digital twin was definitely a phrase that a lot of owners heard and they said to themselves, you know what, I've heard of this thing. Like Gartner and McKinsey had put out reports about how digital twin technology is revolutionizing certain industries. And they usually cited stuff like automotive and manufacturing and things like that. So I think there was just a lot of executive excitement around the digital twin buzzword. So there was a lot of interest in the market. Oh, well, what are the digital twin solutions for construction? What are the digital twin solutions for real estate? Like what does it mean? And so a lot of the software vendors, one, almost overnight, a whole category of AEC style software companies rebranded themselves as digital twin solutions. So if there was a 3D model, we're a digital twin solution. There's a point cloud provider, we're a
whoa.
digital twin
Why
solution.
did you say that? Why did you do that to me?
Well, but that's the thing, right? It's this catch-all, loosely defined umbrella
Yeah.
term that kind of captures enough of the imagination that, oh, okay, if this is some sort of virtual representation of a physical thing, it must be a digital twin. But what I think is more important, this is coming back around to the crux of your question, what should an owner have in place before they buy a digital twin solution is don't go chasing a digital twin solution. A digital twin is just a means to an end, just like AI is a means to an end. Don't go buy an AI solution because it's the era of AI and we need an AI solution. Start by asking yourself, what are the business goals or the business objectives that we're trying to solve with this technology? And work backward from there. So if in the case of an airport, I'm thinking back to some of our early conversations. It was things like, well, we've got so many different technology systems that we use across our entire campus of buildings, right? You've got a BMS, a building management system in one terminal that's by manufacturer A. You got vendor B in another building, vendor C in a third. And those systems, they could all talk to each other in a seamless way. You could roll all that data up and run good analytics and understand, well, where are there inefficiencies for us to maybe just make some minor tweaks and save a lot of money and energy. Or maybe we're spending at times that the energy grid is actually penalizing us if we're using that energy at the wrong times. So there's opportunities to run analytics. Digital twins can gather all that data into a single place and aggregate it so that you can run those kinds of analytics. And there's other solutions that are more BIM and 3D model focused, which are really just, we've got people showing up to our facility who have never seen it before. They never visited this location, but they've got to go and repair equipment that they do know how to fix, but they need access to, like, where is this piece of equipment? What is its operating history? How long has this problem been acting up on this particular piece of equipment? And show me the O&M documentation so that I can get enough context very quickly to get in, do my job, and get out onto the next project. So that's where like 3D and spatial navigation plays a role in all this. So like these are all kind of digital twin use cases, but identifying where there's the biggest opportunity with the technology is that should be your starting point.
I don't have enough time to talk to Ian as much as I want to talk to him. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
you can come
Because
back as many
there's
times as
no,
you want.
and
I
I
love talking to you,
wish
Robert.
people would understand what I mean by that, because when we talk about an implementation, we're not talking about a thought. This is something we've done together.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
So
not this like blue sky idea like
no,
5, 10 years ago when digital twins were as hyped
yeah,
up as they were.
yeah. So that's why I'm like, man, there's so much that I could talk about, but I mean, that brings me to kind of a good question. Since you're familiar with our organization, there's a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people who has ideas.
Hmm.
So how do you kind of help reel in these realistic use cases when people really don't know what they want?
Yeah, yeah. That's a really tough one. I feel like there's kind of a couple of different strategies for tech companies as they approach their customers. So like option one, and I think this is kind of like the default that owners perceive technology vendors as, like, the owner's out shopping for a solution. They want to buy a solution, implement it, and move on to the next thing. And in that situation, it's a traditional vendor customer relationship. There are plenty of tech companies that are set up that way. They've got a product that is ready to go off the shelf, minimal configuration. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got technology developers who will build whatever the owner or their customer wants them to. They'll start from scratch. Maybe they've got a kit of components, and they'll kind of turn your blue sky ideas into a workable solution, and it'll be tailored and bespoke to you. It's almost like buying off the rack suits versus totally custom made. You start totally from scratch. I love the middle ground there, because there are a lot of technology companies that will approach potential customers and they'll say, we want to be a partner to you. It's like, we're not going to build whatever you want. We're not going to build a brand new custom solution for you. But in the same way, we don't want to just sell you software, wipe our hands, and then go sell it to the next customers. Like, we actually want to like walk the walk with you, understand your challenges and why they're pain points. And then we want to like engage with you and deeply configure our software in a way that fits your needs and basically ensures your success. And they build account teams so that you get not just a salesperson and an implementation person, but usually there's some degree of customer success where someone's checking in with you regularly post implementation and making sure, hey, how's it all going? Are you solving all the problems that you want to? So from a vendor side, I would say look for a software vendor who leads with that type of customer success and partnership approach. On the internal side, that's certainly a challenge in and of itself, is just kind of getting everybody to agree.
If I think that I want to get an out of the box, off the shelf, and dive into that, guess what? You can do it. There will be limitations because some of the smaller facilities are not that big of a deal. When you start getting into the 2 million square feet and the complexities, where things are going to be a lot different, and then some people who try to get the flat work in there. So It depends. You have to decide how hard you want to fight and if you want to fight.
Hmm.
You got to decide, am I willing to fight this fight? Because let's think about it this way, and I'll talk about it from this side. There is a certain cost that's associated with whichever way we go, there's a cost, right? If we just get a platform off the shelf and do it ourselves, is people think, oh, it don't cost that much. Yes, it does, because you just hadn't dove in as far. And then if I have people come in and do it, there's a different kind of cost. It's a little bit, it appears as it's more expensive, but when you get the balance and the scales, you're gonna laugh at how similar they are, because this one may get there faster and it may seem like a bigger upfront cost. That other one is coming along the way, because
Exactly.
we got to get to a point where you can't do something and you're going to pay somebody. Both ways is something that we have to be able to have conversations in this industry to be able to say, maybe we want you guys to start it. And then, you know what, we can take it from here because y'all have already done all the integrations, things are working. And maybe we just want y'all more of a consulting role. I'm not saying that's how it should be, but have conversations so that you can give you guys a true expectation of what y'all wanting to do, because
Hmm.
that will let you start to make some headway into this. Because if you don't, man, digital twins and the amount of data, the amount of stakeholders, the amount of people that's yah, rah, 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 and man, it can be very confusing.
And that's also where coming back around to very early on defining what are the business objectives that we're buying this thing to solve. Because once you get consensus, that might be, maybe I'm understating this, but I imagine the goals of the exercise, that's probably not going to be an easy consensus to get. But once you do get there, it helps answer a lot of questions down the track. Like that becomes your North Star. So anytime that there's disagreement about, well, which systems should we be integrating to this digital twin solution? It's like, well, let's look at the reasons that we're buying a digital twin initially. It's like, sure, maybe we can integrate that later on down the track, but let's be really clear about why we're integrating those systems and what those integrations are going to get us in terms of ROI. Like what is the use case that we're going to enable? How is it going to either save us money or help us win more customers or impact our bottom line in some way, shape, or form? So I think like at the executive level, getting that business objective or the clear business objectives prioritized is, it's got to be a good step one. And then share that with the software vendors that you're considering working with, because that'll also help determine, all right, let's make sure that we get a good fit for what that initiative needs to be.
I was getting ready to ask you what early decisions set the tone for a smooth rollout, but we kind of answered that. But I want to kind of dive into that a little bit, because
Yeah.
if you do a proof of concept and you can't be successful in that proof of concept, there's no way that executive is going to buy in. Okay. And then
Yeah.
there's a counterpart to that. A lot of people don't understand. Most people choose facilities that deem success. And then after that, oh my God, Ian, that's when it hits. That's when the hard stuff hit. We're not in proof of concept. This
Hmm.
executive has bought into what you're doing. They've signed that $1 million check. What are you gonna give me now? And you know the typical executive, they don't care about a lot of things except what am I getting in return? What are the objectives? What are the metrics?
Yep.
And if you can't answer that, it's hard to prove digital twins out because they take time.
Hmm. 100%. And that's where, so let's kind of think a bit about this as a timeline again, right? So ideally the customer determines, I'll say owner, I'm sorry, I'm talking like a software vendor. Owner determines, here's what I want to accomplish, right? The goal is I want to reduce my energy consumption by X% or save this many millions of dollars. Let's just kind of treat that as the example. What they then do is then they take that to, maybe there's 2 or 3 software vendors that might be able to help them get there. And then each of those 3 software vendors says, great, good to hear that's your goal. Here's how we're able to accomplish that. Here's how much it's going to cost. Owner decides to go with a vendor. Now you're at a stage where you're right. You're basically in implementation mode at this point, or at the very least, you are like deep in the kind of workshopping and scoping phase that is specific to the owner and the owner's facilities. What I think usually gets lost at this stage is everyone is so focused on making sure that it works, like bringing the right data and integrations and ingredients into the mix, combining them in a way that is going to like produce the best outcome. So from a technical perspective, it's easy for everyone to be focused on that and making sure that that's successful. But there is a huge factor of success in the change management and the people who are going to be involved, not just post implementation, but also just messaging. Here is a change that's coming to our organization. And that change ideally is messaged at a couple of different levels. So ideally, the executive that signed off on it has a good, compelling reason about why they're investing this much money. And they are a really good person to, even if they don't draft the communication or deliver the message themselves, at the very least, if it's basically that executive makes it known to their team and the people who are going to be impacted by, hey, we're adopting this new technology. If an email goes around or there's a brief presentation that comes from that person that says, we've made this decision, they have my endorsement, and here are the results that we're going to see from it. And here's why it makes your life easier as a user of this tool. Because it's really easy for the people who this ultimately gets handed down to say like, oh, great, I got a new system to learn. This is going to slow me down. But if at the executive level, they clearly communicate, here's why we bought it, here's how it's going to help our company, and here's how it's going to help you in your day to day. So we graciously ask that you participate in the process of being trained. We ask that you give the team grace as we're kind of navigating this transition, but here's what it's going to look like when we come out the other end and why it's going to be better for everybody. And that message can actually come from a couple different levels. Certainly the executive level, but the people who are going to be participating in the change, they shouldn't hear about it from the vendor themselves. They should also hear about it from internally. So this is something that ideally your software vendor is able to kind of equip with the right messaging and the right statistics or the right ROI language that's going to be messaged to everyone involved in the change.
Hey, Ian, I hear you, Ian. I got you, man. I hear you. But guess what? I'm glad you brought that up about that executive saying this is what we're gonna do. Because guess what? We as a team have to find some way of aligning that team. We diving into it and we're thinking, man, we got a lot of data. What are we supposed to do with data? How we supposed to align this? I mean, I got this guy over here whose only thing he wants to do is work orders. He don't care about putting that data back. You got you got these guys who all these different worlds, all these different people who are working with data, data. And how in the world do we take this man's expectation and
Mhm.
try to align all of these teams with that amount of data so that we can somewhat implement a digital twin?
Yeah. And that's where again, super clear use cases are going to help win the day, because you're right. If the challenge is, oh, we got a lot of data, let's figure out what we can do with it. That's not a challenge that you want to put on an entire kind of subset of your team at an owner, right? Like just like you said, there's one guy who wants to do nothing but make sure work orders are being closed out. He doesn't care about the massive amount of data that you're sitting on. He cares about if there's going to be a new tool coming down the pipe, what impact is it going to have on me? Do I have to work harder to now tag each of these work orders differently? Or is it actually going to work for me because it's taking advantage of all of this data and maybe suggesting how I can move more quickly? Or when a new work order comes in, it says, hey, this probably needs to be routed to this person. Or, hey, you solved this problem before. Here's 3 examples of it. Go take a look at how you solved that last time, and maybe it'll make your life easier this time. So this is where, yeah, at the executive level, those types of stories are probably not going to be messaged. That alignment needs to exist up and down the entire organization. So beneath the executive level, you're going to have a series of stakeholders, probably like at the management, maybe up to the VP level. And those are the people who ideally are messaging or at least bringing the software vendor in to help tell the story properly, tell the story about how each and every person who's impacted is going to benefit from it and what the expectations are around, like, if we're going to stand this up, here's the level of cooperation we need. Hey, work order guy. I don't want to just call them work order guys, but the guy who's focused on work orders. It's like, we would love to just understand this a little bit better, or suggest if you do this slightly differently and here's the outcome that you get as a result of it, is that making your life better or worse? So there might be like consultative conversations during implementation. So setting those expectations ahead of time, like, hey, we're bringing in this vendor. They would like to borrow a little bit of your time, but the goal is to help you benefit in these three ways. That's something that the management layer will be able to communicate more effectively than anybody.
So, I got to throw this at you. There's some people who try to handle these things at the VP level and like, hey, I'm gonna do this, this, and that. Don't have any idea of the legacy systems. They don't have any idea of the grassroots of that.
Mhm.
When we're bringing all these teams together, and then we get to thinking about the grassroots guys and the legacy systems that we have to deal with that may not be conducive to us producing any data that the digital twin can use. So we got some obstacles on some of the things that how have you been able to approach or help owners understand legacy inconsistent data or data that is useful to a digital twin that can't be pulled out to the digital twin?
So this is where, again, coming back around to like, here is the key problem that we want to solve, or here's the key business challenge that we're trying to solve for. If that remains the North Star, it should avoid a situation where you get so far down the track where you've gone with a software vendor, you sign contracts, money's on the line, and then you find out after the fact, oh, wait, hang on, we don't have enough good data or a way of getting the data from point A to point B in order to make that use case possible. Because if you were really clear up front about here are the things that we're trying to solve for, those are questions that naturally, like, your software vendors are trying to protect they're trying to de-risk implementation for both the owner and for themselves, because they want a positive experience to earn repeat business. So those are questions that, if those use cases are really well defined up front, the ingredients to power those use cases should naturally be part of the conversation, and enough discovery gets done before a contract is signed. If you do end up getting far enough down the track that it's like, all right, we've bought this solution, we know we want to accomplish these use cases, but we just don't know how we're going to get information out of this system and into our digital twin, then there's another kind of ROI question to be asked, which is, there's probably a way to get the data out, and it might be like building custom software that gets the data where it needs to. It might be investing in a different legacy system, so replacing that legacy system outright, which is naturally going to come with a cost. But the big question is, like, if you've defined, here's the ROI that we're expecting once we get this digital twin up and running, will those additional costs end up paying for themselves? And if so, how quickly? I remember working, this is a long time ago. I remember working with a New York City developer on an apartment complex project, and they paid our architecture firm to go all the way through design development. And they said, hey, we're going to change the unit mix. We're basically going to like change the number of each type of bedroom. It's like, all right, you guys have another 2 months. We're going to pay you guys to go through the process again. 2 months later, we finished up design development with a brand new unit mix. And they said, hey, we're going to change the unit mix on you again. We went through that process and they kept paying for it. It wasn't like, oh, hey, architect, you need to work for free. They ran through that unit mix until they got it just right. From our perspective, we were happy because we were earning money doing our jobs. They were buying additional services. But we knew that as soon as they pulled the trigger and bought that apartment complex, any additional money that they had spent redesigning and reconfiguring the building, they were going to make back in a month or two easily, because of the value of the asset that they were going to be invested in. So you could kind of look at it in the same way as, is our inability to get the data in such a problem that it's actually worth investing in getting it right? Or is it maybe a use case that we could put off to later on until we replace this legacy system, maybe for other reasons?
Man, I tell you, some of them legacy system replacement are enormously expensive. I know when you were working with us, we were probably on our second or third iteration of our standards.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're on 5 now. So that just lets you know that after the implementation, after you adapted it, the governance as you go through it changes so much.
Oh yeah.
And we've learned, I mean, you learn from each little bits and pieces, but in your experience, what type of, once you get past implementation and you're not adaptive, what type of governance structures have you seen that kind of allow digital twins to thrive?
A lot of times, just like what we were talking about when it comes to change management, you've got people at multiple levels throughout the organization. You want some level of representation from each, right? So the same executive that signed off on it, or at least somebody in their department, should be regularly engaged in just making sure that the investment was worth it. Like, are things working, or are there technical issues or training problems? What's preventing that key goal, that North Star of here's what we want to accomplish with a digital twin? Continue taking a temperature on it. Are we getting the value that we paid for? And if not, why not? What do we need to do to address it? Might involve the software company, might involve just internal training and making sure that processes are in place. Just like you talked about standards, it might even mean, all right, we just need to make some adjustments to the standards so that the right processes are feeding into the solution so that we could get the outcome that we're missing out on. And so I know that's kind of a vague answer, but if you put all of all of governance on just kind of either the team that implemented it, but aren't involving the users and the executive level decision makers and everyone in between, and making sure that the value is truly being realized, then you've got this imbalance. And eventually you're going to end up with one of two things. You're going to end up with an executive that wants to see more, but doesn't have support from the people who can actually do something about it. Or on the flip side, if you've got a whole bunch of really technical, excited people down at the grassroots level, but you don't have technical executive buy in, you've got a whole bunch of people who are just kind of like chasing the next cool thing, spending a lot of their time distracted from what they actually should be producing for their company. I'm trying to spin up really cool pet projects that might not actually create real value for the organization. So I think the governance needs to make sure you strike that right balance and keeps everyone on that North Star focus.
It's funny you talk about the excited grassroots, and if you got the excited grassroots, you gotta have somebody in the executive level who has some excitement, who's seeing some value, because if you don't, your efforts become outdated quick.
Hmm.
And that's how you see people just drop an investment and go move on, and it's just stalemated. So
Yeah.
you gotta make sure that both feel some excitement, because if they don't, you're done.
Yeah. So that's the question of how do we keep this digital twin up to date is one that I heard an awful lot when I was with Willow. And it's a totally valid question because at some point all the information that gets loaded up is it's there to serve a purpose. So again, make sure that top level, here's why we built the digital twin in the first place. Make sure that you're serving that ultimate outcome. So when that's not clearly defined, then it's very easy to look at a digital twin and say, "Oh my gosh, this is just one more massive database of information. Who's going to keep it up to date?" And I know that we didn't try to define a digital twin. I don't think we should try at this point to do it, but there's all kinds of different data that can go into a digital twin. I usually, like, for sake of simplicity, I break it down into like three main kinds of information. There's spatial data. So that's basically, you could think of that as like a 2D representation in floor plans and drawings. You could think of it as a 3D BIM representation or point cloud representation, but that's basically like, here is the building or the facility and what it looks like to navigate it in space. So that's type of data number one, spatial data. The next type of data that we touched on with things like building automation systems or building management systems, that's live data. So integrations of real time or regular, usually censored data feeds. So think of it like throughout your entire facility, you've got temperature and humidity. You might have people counting sensors that are deployed. If not people counting sensors, you might have things like key cards or turnstiles that people are badging through that you can use as a way of counting how many people pass through particular parts of the building. And those systems all generate information that can be incorporated into a digital twin. And those are kind of the easiest data sets to keep up to date because it's usually an integration that's automatically on like 15-minute or so intervals, just downloading historical timestamped information and putting it into the twin. So that's actually like the easiest of of all to keep up to date. But then the third kind is basically like asset information, or sometimes we call it static information. But in terms of facility management, I think this is where our head goes in terms of things like here's a register of all of the equipment in a building, its manufacturers, model numbers, serial numbers. Now, there are ways of being able to synchronize things like enterprise asset management solutions. So think like IBM Maximo or Oracle, and like these major players have these enterprise asset management solutions where this information all lives and suits like accounting teams to do things like asset depreciation. We won't go into that, but a lot of that information exists and could be synchronized in real time. And there is usually some sort of a system of record for that construction project where any changes to the floor plan or the 3D models are captured first. The information about any new equipment or existing equipment that's going to be removed is logged, and detailed information about each of those pieces of equipment, as well as how it's supposed to perform, like during the commissioning process, that all lives somewhere before it gets thrown over the fence into operations. I know we covered a lot of ground, so a lot of different ways.
I'm glad you did, because those type of hard lessons that owners need to understand, that you know what, unorganized data can still paint a pretty picture, but that don't mean it's an accurate picture.
Mhm.
So those type of things like that, where these they need to understand, get your data together. You're gonna want to renovate. You're gonna want to do something. The AHU, the rooftop or whatever, is gonna go down. There
Mhm.
has to be something in place that kind of mediates that. Brings me to what are some practical takeaways from all of our conversation that you can kind of offer the audience that owners should consider? What kind of practical takeaway?
Man, I keep coming back around to like, what are the key use cases? I can't drive that message
Yeah.
home enough. Um, there's also, so let's kind of come back to that for a second. Of course, having that as your North Star is going to be the best way to ensure success for not just digital twin implementation, but we're in this era of AI right now too. You go buy an AI solution because AI is the big topic. Find out and define for yourself what are the problems that we want to solve using AI, and then take that question to the market. While we're kind of on AI and applying that same sort of thinking to practical AI solutions, one of the things I'm hearing more and more as I'm talking with some major enterprise customers at Procore right now, especially on the owner side, is owners are trying to solve the enterprise AI question, which is basically like, how do I build an artificial intelligence solution that isn't just, because I think we're all seeing it now too, is like a lot of the tools and the apps that we use, even in our personal lives, are becoming AI powered. There's like little AI functionality that's starting to pop up in the tools and the apps that we're using today. But that doesn't solve the kind of enterprise AI question. That helps you kind of get maybe a little more efficient or do a little bit more with the apps that you're already using. So owners are starting to ask the question, how do we build an enterprise AI that makes use of all of the right data in all of these different platforms and is able to drive really meaningful business outcomes? And a lot of times it's stuff like, how do I speed up the amount of time that I can either build a new building in, or how can I be confident that as I'm making business decisions, I'm not repeating a mistake that was made in the past. And so there's a couple different ways that you could go about it. There are some companies that are going straight to like OpenAI and Anthropic, and they're basically saying, hey, build us an AI based off of all the data that we have. But what's also kind of interesting is we're starting to see an emergence of these players that are actually highly specialized in different pockets. So what we're starting to see is like, we all kind of by now know the term API. That's the way that like data gets exchanged between two different solutions. There's this new that we're entering in AI, which is basically, rather than just kind of relying on point by point API data calls, there's it's called MCPs, which is Model Context Protocol. Yeah, so it's basically take these expert solutions that go deep in their domains and make sure that they are able to share the context from each of those solutions up to your enterprise AI. And that can enable you to kind of like across your entire business, don't worry about just getting all the data ingredients into one single place, but make sure that you're driving meaningful outcomes at each of those different levels. So at the enterprise AI, sure, that's where like an OpenAI or an Anthropic or plenty of other solutions can help you. But pay close attention to how you're getting the data at that middle layer and making sure that you're serving it up and interpreting the data into ways that are meaningful for that particular data set.
I'm diving into that right now.
But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, we're diving into that right now. It's a little daunting right now. A little daunting trying to get some, but that's what we're here for. You
yeah,
know me, I don't care about failing. Well, on to the next one, but I'm gonna try it out. So, Ian, look, man, I shouldn't have brought you on here, man, because look, every time I talk to you, man, I just want to talk, talk, and talk, and I ain't never got enough time, But I'm like, I ain't gonna just stalemate him. Give me some last points, and let people know how they can connect with you and follow what you're doing. This ain't the last time you're getting on here, so don't try to run from me, man. I
I don't
know
want
where
to run.
you
I want
are.
to have more conversations. So yeah, I feel like we're scratching the surface. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm more than happy to come back. One of the best ways to get in touch with me is LinkedIn. I check LinkedIn very regularly. So yeah, that's feel free to do a connection request, send me a LinkedIn message. Happy to connect with anyone who's interested in diving deeper on this stuff. And yeah, in the same way, some of the things that I'm hearing from the customers I'm working with that seem like they're relevant to the industry, I'm trying to at least every 2 weeks or so come out with a post that's just here's what's top of mind. Here's what I'm seeing in the industry, and love to start conversations that way. So LinkedIn's the way to go.
man, you've been very modest. You know that right now. People don't understand. This dude then wrote how tell people how to do dynamo scripts. Man, I'm gonna let you be modest, but he's a really smart guy. So
I appreciate
I'll say it.
that. I would say just another word of advice for anyone listening is just like be curious. If you think there's a way to do it, a better way, like go explore it. And there's never been a better time than now to like we've got more access to information than we ever have. Dynamo is one of those things that I remember working with a couple of guys like the BIM team at KPF that really opened my eyes to like, wait a second, when you structure data in a smart particular way, you can do incredible things with it. And I remember just kind of being blown away, like seeing the first time I filtered a list in Excel. And then you kind of build off that. And that's really what Dynamo was an extension of structured data into BIM. And that's what got me curious too about like, hey, wait a second, are there applications for this data rich 3D model outside of design? Absolutely there are. But the way that you think it might be relevant might not be the way that the owner really wants to see it. So that's where I also love LinkedIn. It's an opportunity to just kind of reach out to people that you wouldn't have talked to otherwise. And,
Yes.
hey, I would love to pick your brain on this because I think I've got an idea that's going to make your life easier or change the industry. Just yeah, don't be afraid, be curious and network in that way. There's no shame in that.
I did a podcast a couple years ago, and I was talking to a guy, and it was me and my producer, which is my daughter. And he asked me a question, and I had to think. And she said, "Finally, somebody made you think." Yeah. She said, "Finally." I'm like, "I am your dad." And she's like, "No, somebody made you think." So the fact that I'm sitting here saying, "Hey, man, this is a smart guy," I saw her eyes get big because she never hears me say that.
Oh,
And
man,
so she's like, "Okay, if he said this, this dude must got something." So,
I
but no,
appreciate.
but it's always a pleasure.
It's amazing
Always a
how our kids can humble us like that real quick too, right?
Oh,
They
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Man, I appreciate it. As you know, in Digital Twins, you got so many things we can talk about. Implementation. We still scratch the surface. The contractual, the governance aspect, the cybersecurity. There's a lot of things that we still need to discuss. So, brother, just stay there, man, and we're just gonna keep plugging at this and trying to help owners educate themselves on when the contractors come talk to you and the vendors, I want to give you guys a better means to have a better conversation. And that what this show is about. Being able to talk to guys like yourself who are on the other side, know how to shape these conversations. So thank you so much.
oh my gosh, you're welcome. This was a lot of fun. I'm happy to come back anytime you want, Robert. It's always good talking to you.
Thank you for joining me on the Digital Exchange for this deep dive into digital twin implementation. Choosing a platform is important, but the real value comes from how it is deployed, governed, and adapted across an organization. When owners invest in data readiness, internal alignment, and long-term stewardship, the digital twin becomes a living asset that grows with them. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep building smarter.